Out of this whole collection, I think the only two movies that aren't here are Captain Marvel. Iron Man because you borrowed it. And Avengers Endgame, because obviously those are still in theaters and they haven't been released yet. So welcome to our roundtable discussion of Avengers Endgame. We just did one of these for Revenge of the Sith the other day, and given how huge Avengers Endgame is, it literally made over $1 billion in just a few days. That's unprecedented. It really is.
What's funny
even for this movie.
What's funny about that, I was actually watching a video about this. I watched Jeremy Jahns. He talked about why he wanted to give kind of pointers on why Avengers Endgame has made so much money and why they were so off on the calculations. Because it was projected to make 350 or something like that, 600, some number that was extremely low for what they actually did. And he said that the calculation was based on the amount of theaters that the theater had set aside for the movie. And then when they realized that all the theaters were selling out, they were like, oh wait, let's add another theater and another theater. So really theaters started out, let's say, doing 3. Then they realized, hey, we can make more money if we open up 4 more theaters. So then you would have 7 theaters playing Avengers Endgame instead of just 3. So that's why they made all the money. Kudos to Jeremy Jahns. Shout out. That was a cool video. I really liked it.
Yes, this is an unpaid promotion. He actually is a very good YouTuber. I also like this YouTuber right here, Chris Stuckman. I more so just use that book as a way to be able to stand all these up, as you can see, because my little Walmart Avengers cup and As You Wish Spider-Man mug aren't enough. So I needed something, but
Chris Stuckman's review was good too. So if you haven't watched them already, watch the spoilers reviews of Chris Stuckman and Jeremy Jahns. They're pretty good.
Yes. And to that point, if you're watching this and you haven't seen the movie yet, go ahead and
turn off.
Close the window on your browser right now, or shut up your phone.
Go to the theater right now. Stop what you're doing. Rethink your life. Go to the theater and watch it.
You want to go home and rethink your life. For all those who are here for a purpose, that purpose being to hear our spoiler-filled discussion of this movie, you're in the right place. Because, me and Justin were talking, and we realized that you can't talk about a movie like this that's made such a huge pop culture, impact without reviewing things related to spoilers, because you literally just can't dance around so many things that happen in this movie that impact the plot.
It's true.
Especially because literally a lot of the stuff that we see in the trailers happens in the first 20 minutes.
I was going to say the first hour is literally the trailers that you see.
Yeah.
Is the first hour. After that, it's completely unprecedented territory.
Yeah,
which is funny because it's actually familiar because they do. Let's get this out of the way. They time travel. Which, I don't know who I was talking to. I don't know if it was you or somebody else. But the time travel stuff that they talk about in this movie is actually backed up by legit science, which is kind of cool that they did their homework and actually, anyway, it was cool.
I love how this film is set in 3 distinct acts. Sometimes I like movies that, are more, they're unconventional in that way, but Endgame is set up in a very straightforward and efficient structure. First hour, it's very dour and depressing because literally you learn that most of this movie, the grand majority of this movie, takes place 5 years after the snap. Thor kills Thanos.
Which, that was half an hour into the movie.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting. And then all of a sudden, they show up. So, at the beginning of the movie, they all show up and they're like, oh no, they all kill Thanos. And Captain Marvel's there and she's like, well, let's go find him and kill him. And they're like, well, we want to go kill him too. Okay, let's get in a ship and go kill him.
Yeah, let's do it.
So
the movie begins.
And they fly in the Milano, which is the Guardians of the Galaxy ship. They fly to Thanos' place, and you find out that Thanos has been like, oh, I destroyed the stones because I'm awesome, and actually when I destroy the stones, I'm actually dying anyway, so I suck. And then they beat on him for a little bit, and then they're like, where are the stones? And he's like, I destroyed them. And they're like, oh, what? And then Thor, before Thanos can really get much more screen time, Thor cuts off his head. Which was a really big surprise because I was like, oh.
He's dead. What makes it even better is that Thor, it's played for a joke, but it actually is pretty dramatic too when Thor's like, I went for the head.
Just play off of this joke. And Infinity War.
Well, it's part of his art. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, but by the way, it's like an Infinity War. Where it's like, you should have gone for the head, and then Thanos is like, and then they all turn to dust.
Yeah.
So Thor's like, I went for the head. And everybody's like, even though it's like a creepy laugh, because you're like, it's kind of morbid.
Well, yeah, it's like a very serious scene, even though it's funny, just because, like, that's... You'd expect him to say that if you were really there, because, like, Thor in that moment, you can imagine how guilty he felt after, he literally could have ended it right there if he cut off Thanos' head originally.
Right.
Which he didn't, which inadvertently he made the mistake that caused half of the universe to be snapped away.
Yeah.
And so that's why he would have been like, I went for the head this time. I did it. We're done.
Right.
And then 5 years later, which was surprising.
Cut 5 years, and you're just like, what are we doing? Because after that, you're like, I'm in uncharted territory. They already killed Thanos, so what do we do now that they've killed Thanos? Which I really thought that the introduction after that, they do 5 years. You find out Cap's running a support group. Everybody else is kind of stationed around the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Captain Marvel's out, and they're all kind of coordinating from Earth what to do and protect the universe and everything.
Black Widow's kind of taken over what Captain America used to do for the Avengers. She's basically become like the pseudo Nick Fury / Captain America.
Right, leader of the Avengers.
Yeah.
Which I didn't mind actually. I thought their little setup was kind of cool. You get, if I remember correctly, it's like Rocket and Nebula, Okoye, Captain Marvel, and Rhodey, right?
Yeah, they all have like their separate groups.
Right. What I find interesting though is that they're having Rhodey tail Barton or Hawkeye, which by the way, the first part with Hawkeye is gut wrenching, sad.
It was expected, but yes, it was gut wrenching.
Yes.
And for the two of us, we saw opening night at the IMAX in Arizona Mills, which was like the prime audience for this movie. It was a reactionary one, but in all the ways that you would want it them to be. Like they would shut up for all the moments you want them to shut up in, but then in moments like when Barton's family turns to dust, you could literally hear everyone in the audience go, "What? No!"
Yeah, I actually, sometimes those reactionary people can really mess up a movie, and I gotta give kudos to the audience that we were with, because maybe they're just like us in the fact that we were all excited, but we all wanted to enjoy it, and so everybody was just kind of quiet and was loud when we had to be and quiet when we had to be, and it was really good.
Yeah, I was extremely worried going into the screening that we'd get just obnoxious people ruining it for everybody, but no, they were respectful. But yeah, I mean, that certainly turned into a very emotional moment when you saw them whisk away. And really everyone, I mean, I know some people have problems with Thor and Hulk with how they're portrayed in this movie after the 5-year jump, but I think it works. And I think especially because in the first hour, they do so much that is interesting in developing the characters and setting up the very dour, depressed, and kind of like mixed tone that the world has at that point. And it really sets the emotional stakes very well, which I think is very crucial, because in a movie like this, you could just have, Thanos with the biggest army ever, and that might be enough to set up your movie, but they make it feel personal like they did in Civil War. You actually feel an emotional connection to what they're actually going after, instead of just being like, hey, it's the Avengers, you're going to blow some stuff up.
Let's go get the stones and blow stuff up.
That could have been it for 3 hours, but no, they do more with it.
I probably would have enjoyed that movie too, but the fact that they set it up to be so, they set it up to be super depressing, and then when Scott Lang shows up, by the way, there have been multiple questions to the Russo brothers about this. Like, what would have happened if the mouse hadn't accidentally stepped on the little button to turn on the quantum zone thing? Anyway, he played it off as that was one of the alternate realities that Doctor Strange saw, and the mouse didn't step on it, and it would have just stayed the way it is. But when Scott Lang comes out, you see Scott go, and he's like, what happened? And the kid looks at him and keeps writing, and Scott's like, what? What's going on? Also, I love the fact that I forget his name. The security guard. He's the
Spanish he's Ken Jeong, yeah.
Ken Jeong. I love the fact that he's the security guard.
And he's just there, they don't make like a big deal out of his cameo. It's just, there's Ken Jeong.
No, the funniest part about that is when Scott Lang is walking away and he's like, just watching him walk away on the storage. Anyway, made me laugh a lot.
Yeah.
But when Scott shows up and you see the memorial to people who died, and he sees his own name, he's like, what is going on? And then he goes and sees Cassie, and
that was a great scene.
Yes, and it was awesome. He's like, "You're so much bigger," and they say hi, and then he's like, "I gotta go find the Avengers." And you see Black Widow's not dealing with it very well, and she's really sad about Hawkeye. And then Scott Lang shows up, and he's like, "Hey, there might actually be a chance. This quantum theory thing might actually work."
Yeah.
Go back in time, and then you go, "Okay, so we're going time travel."
Which was realize what this movie really is about.
Right. And you spend all this time building it up so that when they have that little small... The reason I'm bringing all this up is because when they get that small sliver of hope, like Cap jumps on and Black Widow jumps on and Scott's like, yeah, let's go do it. Which, by the way, Paul Rudd is awesome. Anyway,
his point taco.
my whole point is that the part when he like, hey, there's a chance that this could work, like all of them start jumping in on it, and there's like, they all look like a million times more like into it than where they were before, which I think was a good touch.
Yeah, and it certainly, and it kind of plays into the point I made earlier about this really being a smooth movie in terms of its structure. You have that first hour where you set up everything, and it's not slow in the way that I mean to say it's boring. Like it's interesting because you see where everything's going, but then once the second act kicks in, it's a blast.
It's non-stop.
And look, there are so many moments that will be nitpicked for eons because of the whole time travel thing and other like random plot hole stuff. But I mean, who really cares?
I was gonna say I use a quote from this movie. Thor, Captain America, and Tony Stark are all standing looking at Thanos. And he's like, this is a trap. He's like, yeah, I don't really care. That's what I feel about this movie. Anytime anybody's gonna nitpick about whether or not they use Captain Marvel good or anything like that, it's like, yeah, I don't really care. Because everything just, like, the movie itself is just, it's literally, like, one of the taglines is it's an experience that you need to go see in the movie theater, you need to go sit down, prep yourself, and go and sit for 3 hours and just watch it.
Yeah, it's a real pop culture event. It really is.
If you've seen any of the Marvel movies, like, this movie's just gonna tie everything off with a nice bow. Anyway, back to the story. But once the second act starts, it's beautiful, and I love the parts that they picked to go back to. They picked the Battle of New York. They pick the opening from Guardians of the Galaxy.
And I especially love the cut where they're pulling footage directly from the original Guardians, where Chris Pratt is doing his dance with those rat-looking things.
Yeah.
But then at one point it does this cut to Nebula and Rhodey like observing Chris Pratt, and he's just singing on his own. And it's like a very jarring move from you hearing the actual song, like hey, hey, to him singing it. And it's great.
And the two of them are like, what?
And that's kind of what the second act is. It's basically just an hour long. Well, I mean the third act kind of is too, but like the second act especially is just the fan service act of this movie.
Yeah.
But the fun thing is that it still serves the story in a really good way. Mm-hmm. I loved the touch where in the Battle of New York, Professor Hulk, he meets Sorcerer Supreme, the one that was played by Tilda Swinton. I was like, huh. You wouldn't have known going into this movie that she was going to be in it, but she shows up, and it's not just for a glorified cameo. Like, it actually impacts the story, and it kind of provides some more context to the rules of time travel in this movie, which are like we talked about. They're actually pretty consistent with science. Well, time travel isn't, as far as we know, not real, but
Hey, they have it in Area 51.
We don't want to get flagged by the military. I don't want to get demonetized. Which I probably will anyway, but who knows?
Yeah. But the time, I really liked that where that part where she's like, if you take the stone out of here, it creates another branch of my reality, and it could mess up another timeline, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I really liked that.
We'll get to that at the end, too, with something I was going to answer one of your questions that we had when the movie was over. But anyway,
I don't remember. Anyway, that whole scene where Professor Hulk, he's like, I'm just going to take it from you, and she's like, and knocks him out of the Hulk body, and the Hulk body falls. And it's Mark Ruffalo, and he's like, what?
Well, actually, the scene I thought you were going to quote was when we first are introduced to Professor Hulk in the first act. It's Steve, it's Nat, and it's Scott Lang sitting in the cafe with him, like the breakfast diner.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the moment where he takes a selfie with those kids.
Hulk out.
And then Scott Lang repeatedly is just like, I don't want to take a picture. I want to take a picture. No, just
stop it.
Just keep the phone.
Take the dang phone.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
A couple other scenes I really loved. You know, most of what happens with Cap and Steve. Wait, that's the same person. Yeah, Cap and Tony. Sorry.
Yeah.
When they go back to 1970.
Yeah.
There's some really heart-wrenching moments in there. You
right.
know, like Cap seeing Peggy's office,
which that tore my heart out.
And then Tony being able to have one last conversation with his dad about very relevant things.
Right.
And even though it's kind of it's something that you might expect in a movie like this, and it's kind of pulled from its Back to the Future references, which they very blatantly, in a very meta way, reference in this movie, but in a good way. But in referencing that movie, it was pretty obvious to me that they were trying to copy the whole Back to the Future thing, where Marty McFly and his dad, talk about things in the original Back to the Future. So in that sense, it's kind of cliche, but at the same time it works because it furthers Howard Stark's character more, and it furthers Tony Stark's character in such a way that it leads to the conclusion of his story in Endgame.
I liked that part just because it adds us. Sorry, I'm just remembering the movie. If you watch from Iron Man 1 and you watch Iron Man 2, Tony has a really interesting look. And even in Captain America Civil War, he doesn't really like his dad that much.
No.
Thought his dad didn't have time for him or whatever. But this one, he takes the time to talk to Tony, even though Tony doesn't tell him that he's his son.
Right.
He takes the time to listen to him, and I think that does enough to mend Tony's heart a little bit towards his dad, which I thought was really nice. Speaking of Cap and Tony, when they go and visit, there's a part that we skipped over in the first hour.
Careful, I don't want those Blu-rays.
When Tony comes down, he gets out of the spaceship, he comes back to Earth, he sees Pepper. He's all skinny from being almost starving to death.
Oh, yeah.
And he sees Cap, and he's like, you weren't here when I needed you, I'm done. And it's just super heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
And then they fast forward 5 years, and they take Scott Lang, he's like, time travel could work. And Tony's like, I'm done with you guys. It's not gonna work. I've already, the way that you would do it, it just wouldn't work. And I'm not interested in helping you. And anyway, he leaves. Well, Tony figures out time travel. In a night or something. And you see his daughter and you see Pepper Potts, and they all kind of talk. And then Tony, they're trying to figure out time travel, and Tony comes up in an Audi. He pulls up and he's like, "You turned into a baby?" Well, among other things, yes.
Yeah.
And you see kind of this part where Cap and Tony kind of mend the fissure that happened it was kind of building over the Marvel movies and kind of culminated with Civil War, but they kind of mend that. And right before they go to 1970, Tony looks at him and is like, "Do you trust me?" And Cap is like, "Yes, I do." And you're like, BFS forever. Good job, guys. Way to go.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of, then they go to 1970 and all of that. They get the Tesseract, and they get a couple more Pym particles, and
Captain America fights himself.
Oh my gosh.
That was fan service to the T, but in the best way possible.
Right. And the part in the elevator.
Yes. That too.
I was having flashbacks. Okay, so if you lived under a rock and have not seen Winter Soldier, but you should.
I think
Winter
it's
Soldier's amazing. It's like
that one,
right.
I think.
It's one of these three,
Yeah.
if I remember. But that movie, there's a part in an elevator when Cap finds out that S.H.I.E.L.D's been Hydra, and he's in the elevator, and a bunch of dudes get in the elevator with him, and it's pretty clear that they're going to attack him, and he goes,
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
they have a scene like that when they have the Mind Stone. he knows that Hydra is S.H.I.E.L.D., and he goes, Hydra, and just walks off, and all of them are like,
what was so great about that is because, like, not only was it subversive, but it was kind of like the big F you to Hydra that we needed.
Yes.
And it was great because everyone in our theater, again, was into that moment. You know, we were kind of like wooing at the screen when that happened, and then everyone else was like...
I thought he was going to fight everybody.
I thought so too, which would have been cool, but I think the choice they made was better.
I really liked the way that they did it. I thought he was going to beat everybody up, and I would have been okay either way. But honestly, the Hail Hydra thing, just thumbs up Marvel.
It's very clear that this was a Marvel movie made by the Russos, though, because I feel like the references to their Marvel movies are more apparent than other ones.
Right.
Like, even though there's like the whole extended sequence in Asgard with like the Dark World timeline, you know,
yes.
which, I mean...
Take it what you want. In my humble opinion, Dark World is the worst one out of all of these.
It is.
And I just was like, oh, alright.
But going back to this movie that no one saw.
Okay.
Although it's really funny in the scene where, you know, the big Thorbowski is explaining things to everybody about, you know, the Dark Elves and the... Is it the Reality Stone that impacted...
Yeah, it's called the Ether, but it's the Reality Stone.
Yeah. And so at that point, you know, he's explaining how the Ether in that point had affected his girlfriend, Jane Foster, played by Natalie Portman. Everyone's... Because Thor is kind of talking like a bumbling, drunken idiot, you know, everyone's just looking at him like, what? But Scott Lang isn't familiar with the story, so he's just sitting there like, yeah, tell me.
Which, every character in this movie, is so well written.
Yeah.
Thor has a dad bod in this movie, which is hilarious. And they make fun of him about it a lot. And he looks, if you've seen The Big Lebowski, he looks like Jeff Bridges.
He does, especially in that one cut when, Tony explicitly says The Big Lebowski.
Watch out, Lebowski.
And then he cuts to him just sitting there. And it's perfect.
It's really funny. But I think the one that stole the show for me, at least in the first couple acts, was Paul Rudd.
Yes.
He's a dark horse MVP for this movie. Because he is just... Maybe I just have a soft spot for him. But he is one of the... Anytime he's in a Marvel movie, he's absolutely hilarious. In Civil War, when he throws the water, he's like... I'm going to throw this. You throw the blue disc at it to make it big.
Uh-huh.
He throws it out, and they throw it at Rhodey, and it gets big, and it ends up being a fuel truck, and he's like,
oh, that was a water truck.
That was a water truck.
Or even better is when he tries the growth part of his regulator to catch Rhodey in Civil War. I love the part when after he does that, he's like, oh.
In this movie, he's just infinitely... the part with his taco is... He's just watching people fly down, the ship lands, and his taco blows over. And then Rhodey lands next to him, he's like, yeah. And then, a whole bunch of stuff's going on, and he ends up losing his taco. And the Hulk gets him. He's just, so overwhelmed by everything that's going on. It's amazing.
It's great, though. Although I really do think he's the MVP. I mean, there are a couple actors whose performances I like better than his, but he's great because not only does he nail those comedic moments because he is a comedian, but he's great with the dramatic stuff too. Especially after he first sees Cassie again and realizes that she's still alive. The emotion in that moment was so real. You couldn't tell he was acting. It's just that is Scott Lang reacting to him seeing his daughter actually being alive and well.
Right.
Which, that was great. And then there are other moments in the movie too where, after Hulk snaps after they get all the stones, which they get all the stones, and
we'll get to that. We're kind of paused on the synopsis. We'll get to that.
Okay.
That whole part's funny.
Well, I guess the point I'll make then, I'll just say that Paul Rudd, he knew what he was doing in terms of the comedy, but also he kind of set an example for everyone else too, for balancing that with emotion too.
Right. He's awesome. Plus he's with Cap and Tony when they're trying to get the Mind Stone and the Tesseract from the Battle of New York, and he shrinks down into Tony's chest regulator, which I thought was a really nice touch. And he takes out one of the regulators or power thingies. I don't remember what it is. But he takes it out and Tony's like, oh! And he gets out with, they steal the Tesseract. And then Hulk punches Tony and Loki escapes with the Tesseract, and that's well and fine. They all get the stones. We're in the Dark World. Which, by the way, one more point about this. With regards to Dark World, and really this whole movie, this time travel part, they went out of their way to get everybody that was in those movies.
Yes.
Natalie Portman is in this movie.
For like 5 seconds.
Well,
but
I mean, yeah.
She's in it. Which is
Robert Redford is in this movie. The guy who played Crossbones, he's in this movie. Like, they went and got everybody that had been actors or characters before, and I think that's a good thing because it helps with the time travel aspect.
And the continuity
of everything. It was just, they nailed it.
I was really shocked that Robert Redford even showed up in this movie, because he was very outspoken about the fact that last year he was going to be retiring when The Old Man and the Gun came out. And then he shows up in Endgame and is like, oh, I guess, well, I mean, he's retired, but this is going to be his last movie, so that's kind of cool.
Right.
Renee Russo as Thor's mom, too.
Yeah, I caught that. I was like, is she a wife of somebody, or is she a sister, or who is she in relation to the Russo brothers?
Oh, I think she's just Renee. I don't know if there's any relation to Joe or Anthony or anything, but...
Oh, I didn't look that up. My bad for not doing homework. But I noticed that. I was like, I wonder if she's part of the family.
Could be. I'll have to look it up after.
There's one important part from Dark World, though. Thor pulls the hammer Mjolnir from Thor in Dark World. And then he's like, Pym particle, and he teleports to, I guess, the present. It's 5 years in the future. But they get all the stones together, and they make an Infinity Gauntlet, which I thought was kind of interesting because, I mean, the last Infinity Gauntlet obviously got wrecked. But I thought that was kind of interesting that they make their own to fit all the stones and everything. And then they do the snap. Put it on Hulk, and he snaps. And I thought it was, it was a nice touch when Hawkeye's phone starts ringing. Like vibrating. Not loud enough that it's a ringtone, but enough that you can see, like, it worked. It totally worked. Uh-huh. And Hawkeye's like really relieved to hear his wife because he's been hunting down drug dealers and stuff for 5 years, and he's like, you just see like the years melt off of him, which I thought was a really good job by Jeremy Renner.
Yes.
Because
he's great in this movie.
Yes. You see the years like melt off of him, and it was just a nice scene.
Oh, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but before we go on, now that we're talking about Jeremy Renner, how can we go on without talking about the fact that Black Widow's dead?
Oh yeah, that's true. We skipped that part. That part was, my heart.
Now I've heard a good amount of other people talk about this in their spoiler reviews, but did you expect Nat to die, or were you thinking that Hawkeye would?
Well, they were kind of playing hot potato, but I like with who was gonna die and whatever. But I thought, this will be Hawkeye's going to sacrifice himself for the greater good, and his wife and his kids are always gonna remember that he sacrificed himself to save. Well, he like shoots that grenade arrow at Black Widow and like blows her wings, like, see you later. Takes like a swan dive off, and he's like, I'm done. And then Nat saves him, and she's like, there's only room for one. I thought after seeing the movie, I thought that was a good way to have Black Widow conclude her story.
Yes.
I thought it was a good way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked it. After seeing it, I think I liked Hawkeye a little bit more because he can be with his family and retire and be happy with them. And I don't know.
Yeah, and I can see why they would do it too, because they've made a point that Black Widow is someone who basically had everything taken from her throughout her life. And I don't mean that in the sense that because she had nothing left that she was the one that was supposed to die, but I think it's more meaningful because of the fact that basically was her life. She had everything taken away from her family, her youth, her fertility even.
Her whole life.
Yeah, honestly. Like she can't literally have any kids or any real life beyond just killing people, really. And so in this moment in which she can give herself up to where billions of others or even trillions of others in the universe can have their lives back, I think that's a meaningful thing.
I knew going into this movie, I felt like it's going to be really emotionally meaningful, and I feel like I'm going to get choked up. At this point, I was like, oh man, I can kind of feel it coming. Like, I didn't really weep or anything. I know some people have wept during this movie. I'm not overly weepy, but I remember getting really choked up at this part because I was like, oh dang. Black Widow's been there since Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
And she's been a pretty integral part of most of the movies that she's been in. And I think it's kind of unfair that she hasn't got a movie. She has a movie now, but I don't even know what they're going to do that movie on, so I don't know.
Who knows? It could really just be a prequel. I mean, they have the de-aging tech to do it. Like, if they can make Samuel L. Jackson look the way he did in Captain Marvel, I'm sure they can work wonders on ScarJo.
Right.
She looked really young still anyway. What were you going to say before I shifted the conversation over to that?
Oh, well, now that we're talking about time, we didn't talk about how Thanos ends up at the last part.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
still part of the time jump. Sorry, this is kind of convoluted, but if we march back to the time jump, when Nebula and Rhodey go to get the Power Stone, Nebula's time travel thing, she doesn't activate it, or she gets deactivated or something to where she gets captured by Thanos. So she gets interrogated. She ends up, they hack her memory systems, and she gets to see the whole, Thanos gets to see the whole plan. And he gets the Pym particle, and I was kind of curious in the movie about how they were going to do this to where Thanos got back, and they asked the Russo brothers, and the Russo brothers said Ebony Maw re-engineered the particle to make sure that the ship could get there, time travel wise. 2014 Nebula impersonates
2023 Nebula.
2023 Nebula goes back and turns on the quantum leap thing that teleports Thanos' ship right over Avengers compound. So right after they do the snap, Thanos is already there. And so they have this brief moment right after the snap where they're like, we did it, everyone's back, how are we gonna know? And then all of a sudden, Avengers compound gets blown away by all of the Thanos missiles.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was really cool. But after that, the time travel stuff is over, and this ushers in,
possibly the single greatest thing that, not just a comic book fan, which I don't read comic books, but,
it's the last hour is fantastic.
It's unprecedented.
Outstanding.
What they've been able to accomplish here.
It's just, because they blow up the place, Hawkeye saves the Infinity Gauntlet, and, you have three groups. You have, Thor and Captain America and Iron Man, all in one group.
They all challenge Thanos 1-1. Well, 3-1.
Then you have Rhodey, Rocket Raccoon, and Hulk all in one spot at the very bottom of Avengers compound. And
well, Ant-Man too, right?
Well, Ant-Man joins up with them after. He's kind of in a different spot.
Uh-huh.
But then you have Hawkeye way down at the bottom, and he has the gauntlet. Hulk and Rocket Raccoon and War Machine are all kind of under this big rock that Hulk's holding up. And then you see Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. They all look out there and they're like, what's he doing? He's doing nothing. And you're just like, please, for the love, go fight him, please. And then Thor goes, and then Cap goes, where are the stones? They're somewhere under this mess.
Act 3 is brilliant because not only for the reasons you just mentioned, but because Mjolnir, man. Mjolnir.
That is literally one of the best parts of this movie.
possibly one of the best great Scream reactions that was in the theater.
Right.
Was when, after Thor, I think, throws Mjolnir at Thanos and then it flies back again, it's like, wait, Thor's not catching that. Who? Captain America!
And he uses his shield and the hammer, and when I was talking to one of my other friends about this, remember in Avengers when Thor hits Captain America's shield and it says "Durr"? He uses that in that battle, and I didn't catch that the first time.
Oh, I didn't either.
But he throws the hammer off of his shield.
Oh, yeah.
And he uses it and blows Thanos forward, and then he catches it and punches him with the the best part, one of the best parts.
Amazing scene.
It's just amazing.
I was telling my wife, because she hasn't seen it yet, I was telling her, regardless of how you feel about this movie, there are parts of it that are impossible to dislike.
It's true.
And that is one of them.
It's one of the coolest parts in this whole movie.
It's just, regardless of how you feel about movies, how can you not like that?
It's just awesome. It's literally just awesome. And then, because Thanos has to be the big bad guy, breaks Captain America's shield with his sword thing.
Pretty much in
I
half.
didn't think that was going to happen, and then it breaks. And then Cap's like, oh. And then everybody breaks down, and Thor's like, I'm going to disintegrate your world. Oh, I'm a bad guy. And then all those people come, and Cap stands up, and he's just Cap. He tightens his buckler on his shield, and he's going to go attack him. And then
the first thing...
I'm like at a tie between Mjolnir and this part. When you hear Sam in Cap's ear, hey Cap, on your left, and you see every hero that's ever been in Marvel show up to this one fight against Thanos.
Even Pepper Potts in a suit.
Right, and you're just like, what is going on?
And it's like, there's so much stuff to take in that it's going to require multiple viewings to really catch everything. But it's so great, and it shouldn't be great just on a conceptual level, because literally it's like if an 11-year-old bought every single piece of merchandise that was ever made for the MCU, and set it up in their room and was making their own little fan fiction out of the good guys versus the bad guys. That is literally what Act 3 of this movie is. It's like action figures coming to life, in freaking Super Smash Brothers,
right? And
fighting each other. But it's there.
It's amazing. Spider-Man, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Valkyrie, Korg, everyone, all the sorcerers, Doctor Strange, the Wakandans, Okoye, M'Baku, everybody, the Winter Soldier. And then you see right before Ant-Man turns into Giant Man, and he's got Hulk and Rocket Raccoon and War Machine, and Hawkeye's there, and you're just like, this is what my life has been building, all of these Marvel movies. This is the culmination. And they do, as ceremoniously as all the Avengers movies before, they do a tracking shot where it's all the Avengers team in one tracking shot. I don't even know how they did it, but they got it to where they had everybody fit into the screen, and they had the Avengers tracking shot where it's everybody lined up and they're all doing something cool. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's those IMAX cameras, man.
It was awesome.
I think the tracking shot that was a bit cheesier than that was when they had all the women of Marvel into one shot too, but that was still great too, because I forget who it was. Was it Captain Marvel that got knocked down, or was it some other female character? But then Okoye's she's not alone.
No, Spider-Man has the gauntlet. And by the way, quick callback to Homecoming. When he's
instant kill.
Instant kill. All the arms pop out and they start killing all the aliens.
That was great.
But then Captain Marvel's like, give me the gauntlet. And Peter Parker's like, sure, man. How are you? I think you're a little bit outnumbered. And then Okoye's like, she's not alone. And then all the lady Avengers show up. And it's like Wasp and Valkyrie and Okoye and all the women folk of the MCU. Which was really nice. I liked that. I think it was a little bit on the nose is what they were trying to do, but it was good.
Yeah, it was on the nose, but it was still cool.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's another one of those moments that is so obvious what they're trying to go for, but it works still.
It worked.
Now, I do think the final battle at the ruins of Avengers Compound, it does get a little bit much sometimes. Like there are certain scenes where there's so much CGI on the screen and like the camera is kind of close to some of these images that it makes for a lot to take in and focus on, to where the action isn't always coherent or cohesive. But for the most part, they find a way to make like the action flow from one like group of characters to the next, like especially when you have the Infinity Gauntlet going from, well, like the Tony Stark Infinity Gauntlet going from like Black Panther to Spider-Man to Captain Marvel, and like there's a nice flow there because that's the focus of the scene. They're keeping it centered on that, and it makes for an action scene that is very bloated and has a lot going on, but for the most part still works really well. And just on the sense of it having so many characters, it's a lot of fun to watch too.
Everybody gets their little moment to shine. Falcon, everybody. Not one person in the whole MCU doesn't have like a few. I mean, they can't have like a full 20 minutes, but they can have like a minute and a half or something to where they each do something cool in the middle of the battle. And then it ends up Captain Marvel gets the gauntlet. She's going to roll into the back of the van to go back in time and drop the stones off. And Thanos is like, no! Throws his sword in the doorway and blocks Captain Marvel from going. And then you have like this mad grab for everybody to get the Infinity Gauntlet. And Thanos is fighting everybody, and he fights Captain Marvel, and he fights Thor, and he fights Tony, and he gets the gauntlet. And Tony's like, no! And he goes up and like tangles with him, and then gets knocked aside. And Thanos goes to snap, and everybody in the theater was like, and then it was like, dink.
It's like a metal.
Dink, dink,
that's it.
Dink. And he's like, no. And then you look over, and Iron Man has his bleeding edge armor, and he like makes little receptacles for all the Infinity Gauntlet or the Infinity Stones. And you watch him get it, he's like, I am Iron Man. Really?
It's good stuff. It's sad because Tony died.
It's too much for him. Though I did appreciate like Tony was like the last like flipping the bird to Thanos. Because I don't know if it was consciously or not, or this is just filmmaking, but Thanos watches all of everybody that he has worked with, all of his armies, just...
Yes, I think that was intentional.
And then you see Thanos sit down and he's just like... And you're like, yeah! They win, the good guys win.
Right? But I love the fact that they don't play that scene as like the rah, the good guys win. Yeah, sorry, the good guys win moment, because immediately after they recognize that there was like devastation on both sides. Tony has the moment where his life is literally just about to waste away. But then it's made better because Peter Parker has his last good moments with them, and then Pepper talks to him and she's like, it's okay, we'll be all right.
And she says you can rest or something like that. And I was like, oh, that was the other part where I was like, oh my gosh, why are we doing this?
And the hit harder in the funeral scene, where again, there's another tracking shot that is basically like we need to get every single actor in these movies in there.
Well, I appreciated it though, because it was everybody
I did too.
That everybody that Tony had touched, like his family, and then you see like Cap and Hulk and all of these people that have been through there. And I even thought it was a nice touch that the kid from Iron Man 3
yes
is in the funeral procession.
Yeah, I didn't notice that was him at first, but then I looked after and it's like Harley Keener, and I'm like,
It's
okay,
good.
that's cool.
And then you have Thunderbolt Ross and Nick Fury and Maria Hill, and then you have Captain Marvel standing there. And then we get to farewell to Cap, which I thought they were just going to leave him in the quantum zone, putting all of it back, and that was going to be it. But what they did was way better.
I thought that was probably the best send-off to that character they could have done. Because like you, I was sitting there when Captain America was about to go back in time and put all the stones back.
And Mjolnir. He had Mjolnir with him.
Oh yeah, that too. I literally thought that was going to be like a setup for another movie, and I'm like, please don't do this. Just end his character. But then they did. He was allowed to live on his life. He actually got the opportunity to, like Tony, rest, to do something other than just being a soldier. And he finally got his dance with Peggy.
He got to be with Peggy. And he had a wedding ring on. So the best part of it is Sam and Falcon and Bucky are over there, and they see him. It's like, whoa, look, there's that old man. And they obviously it's Cap. And Sam walks over there and he's like, wow, look at you. And he's like, yeah, I thought I'd find some of that life that Tony was talking about. It's like, did something go good? And he's like, yeah, but I'm not going to talk about it. And you're just like, dang it, I wanted to know. But I'm glad that they didn't say anything, because it just leaves it to the imagination that he got his life that he wanted. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And the film's book ended by this little tracking shot that goes into what I would assume is, it's Peggy's home or their future home or whatever, but there's this really nice song that is kind of reminiscent of like something from Up, and you see them dancing in the living room, and that's where it ends.
Right. It was just the other part of that was really cool is Sam was, I don't know if I'm going to be able to live in a world without Captain America. He's like, funny you should bring that up. And he gives Sam the shield to be Captain America.
Yes.
Which I really liked. And some people that I've talked to have been like, I wanted him to give it to Bucky. But honestly, if you've read the comics, Bucky and Falcon have both taken turns as Captain America. Like, it's not a huge deal. They're just going to be partners, and they're going to tear it up in their show that they're going to have for Marvel. Yeah,
now that you say that, I'm really excited for that Disney Plus show that they're going to do, because it was called Falcon and Winter Soldier. I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's like, where are they going to go with that? But now that we've seen Endgame, it's like, oh, okay, one of them is going to take up the Captain America mantle, and now we'll see where that goes from here.
I'm going to be right there with you. I got to start saving my pennies so I can buy it.
Well, at least it's going to be cheap. It's only, it's either $5.99 a month or $6.99 a month, but
it's
comparatively, that's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
It's like half the price of Netflix.
I'm going to buy it, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm going to watch all of them, and it'll be great, and yeah.
Yeah.
This movie, spot on, 10 out of, well, be like 9.8 out of 10. There's like one part that I was like, what? But other than that, like, I don't really care about it because the rest of the movie's just fantastic.
I'm with you, man. Like, I have enough issues to where, I mean, like, very tiny, minuscule issues to where I'd probably give it an A-. But for me, that's like, it's closer to an A than it is to a B+. Like, once I see it again and again, I think I'm thinking that I'm probably going to lean more towards an A, just because even though this is the definition of like a pop culture entertainment event, it does it so well. And because considering all that could have gone wrong in terms of closing out a story that's literally been going on for over 20 movies, the fact that it did this so well with as much of an emotional impact as it has, while still being entertaining, surprising even, I think that's... How much credit can you really give? Because, I mean, I can't even imagine how huge of a task that must be. And they pulled it off, not only by giving us a sufficiently good movie, but one that is as good as this one is.
Right. If Black Panther can get an Oscar nomination, this movie should definitely, like, be nominated and probably win. Like, I don't know, Tony's, like, there are a bunch of people that probably need, like, praise from this movie, but I think Robert Downey Jr.'s performance is probably Oscar-worthy. I think that the movie itself, the VFX, like, the music, like, Alvin Silvestri knocked it out of the park with this one.
He's always been great.
And he's been there since the first Avengers movie. Like, I don't know. If this doesn't make it onto the Oscars list next year, I'm going to be disappointed.
I just had a kind of funny thought, though. and I wonder if this was like an intentional meta moment too. They reference Back to the Future in this movie, as I mentioned.
Right.
Alan Silvestri composed the score for those movies. So, what does that mean for Endgame, since he composed the score for this movie, but Back to the Future exists in this universe?
I don't know.
Thanks again for watching, guys. I know, like the Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones review, this was a long one.
It needed to be, though. It's like the movie. It needed 3 hours to be a sufficient movie.
Yeah, it really did. And some people will argue against that, but I don't care because the time in this movie was used efficiently and I love it. So there you go. Go see it. Keep on fueling Disney's campaign for monopolizing the whole entire universe while we happily sit back and drink our Diet Coke and eat our popcorn and all that stuff. Otherwise, look forward to more reviews and content coming out pretty soon. There's going to be some exciting stuff coming out in the next week. I plan on finally doing a review for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Now that we have version 3.0 coming out. Well, it's out now, I should say. I also plan some content for Pokemon tying into Detective Pikachu.
Ooh.
So that'll be interesting.
And John Wick is on the horizon.
Oh,
John
yes.
Wick 3.
You mean Headshot, the movie?
It's a gentleman's assassin movie.
That too. Thanks again, Justin, for joining me. I'm sure we'll have more roundtables in the future.
Right.
Star Wars or not. And thank you for watching, and you have a good one, guys. Bye.
Bye.